In 1929, a German theologian was cataloguing forgotten documents at the Topkapı Palace in Istanbul. Routine archival work. Dusty, slow, completely unremarkable. Then he unrolled a gazelle-skin parchment dated 1513. Drawn by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. And at the bottom of the map, where there should have been nothing but open ocean, there was a coastline. Rivers. Bays. Mountain ranges running along an interior shore. The kind of detail you only get from direct survey. The problem? That coastline sits under more than a mile of solid ice. It wouldn't be officially discovered by European explorers for another 300 years. And yet, someone had already drawn it. In precise, geographic detail. That's where this story begins. And it only gets harder to explain from here. Before the theories, the bedrock. What we actually know. Because Antarctica's past is strange enough on its own, without anyone adding to it. Antarctica wasn't always frozen. That's not fringe speculation. That's settled science. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the continent was part of Gondwana, a vast supercontinent anchored closer to the equator, covered in forest, river systems, dense vegetation. Fossils confirm it. Researchers have found ancient tree stumps still embedded in the rock near the Transantarctic Mountains, remnants of forests from the Cretaceous period, roughly 90 million years ago, when Antarctica was warm and temperate and nothing like the place it is today. The mainstream timeline is clear. The continent began its deep freeze approximately 34 million years ago, as it drifted south and ocean circulation patterns shifted. Not thousands of years ago. Not in human memory. 34 million years. By the time anything resembling a human being walked the Earth, Antarctica was already sealed. That's the official story. And for a long time, it seemed airtight. Then cartographic historians started looking more closely at what Piri Reis actually drew. In 1960, a history professor named Charles Hapgood at Keene State College in New Hampshire got hold of a copy of the Piri Reis Map. He wasn't a geologist. He wasn't a trained cartographer. What he was stubborn. And what he saw in that map consumed the next decade of his life. The bottom section of the chart appeared, to Hapgood, at least, to show the coast of Antarctica. Not as it looks today under its ice sheet, but as it might look without it. The bays, the inlets, the rough shape of the landmass beneath. He tracked down other maps from the same era. The Orontius Phineas map, drawn in 1531, shows what appears to be an entire Antarctic continent, with mountain ridges along the edges and a depressed interior that looks, unsettlingly, like the subglacial topography that radar surveys would reveal centuries later. A continent whose center sits below sea level, pressed down by the weight of the ice above it. The Buache map from 1737 goes further, and gets certain features wrong, but the lineage of these charts seemed, to Hapgood, too coherent to be coincidence. His conclusion was this: these maps were copies of source documents far older than the 16th century. Documents created by a civilization that had surveyed the actual Antarctic shoreline before the ice. He called the mechanism behind it Earth crust displacement. The idea that the Earth's outer shell had shifted catastrophically, carrying Antarctica from a temperate position to the pole in a geologically rapid event. He sent his manuscript to Albert Einstein. Einstein wrote back. That letter is in the Einstein archives. He called the idea fascinating and worthy of serious attention, though he had reservations about the physical mechanism. Hapgood died before his theory gained mainstream traction. It never did, in the end. Plate tectonics provided a cleaner model for continental movement, and Hapgood's version was largely set aside. But the map question, who drew what, and from what source, that part never got a clean answer. Here's what changes the stakes entirely. Antarctica isn't frozen ocean. It's a continent. And beneath its ice sheet, there is an entire world that most people have never thought about. Mountain ranges, river valleys, deep basins, and lakes, hundreds of them, sealed from the surface for millions of years. Lake Vostok sits under nearly 4 kilometers of ice in East Antarctica. It's one of the largest lakes on Earth by volume. In 2012, Russian scientists drilled through the ice and reached liquid water that had been isolated from the surface for an estimated 15 to 25 million years. They found signs of microbial life. Organisms that had been sealed in total darkness for longer than our entire genus has existed on this planet. There are geothermal hotspots beneath the ice, volcanic vents that keep pockets of the subglacial environment above freezing even today. The subglacial landscape, as revealed by decades of radar imaging, is startlingly complex. Mountain ranges taller than the Alps, hidden under ice. Valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon. And here's the part that should make you pause. Despite all of this, despite Operation Highjump in 1946, despite decades of radar surveys, despite the drilling projects, we have mapped only a fraction of the Antarctic subglacial terrain in high resolution. Every new survey finds formations that weren't on the previous map. What we know about what's under that ice is far less than what we don't know. That's not conspiracy. That's just the scale of the place. Back to the Piri Reis Map. Because here is where the debate gets specific, and specificity is where the real friction lives. In 1960, a US Air Force officer named Captain Lorenzo Burrows wrote a letter to Hapgood after comparing the map with aerial survey data from Operation Highjump. His assessment, certain features on the map appeared consistent with the subglacial coastline of Antarctica as revealed by modern measurements. That letter exists. Researchers cite it. Skeptics dispute its interpretation. The mainstream counterargument is careful and worth hearing honestly. The Piri Reis Map has documented errors, significant ones. The landmass at the bottom may be a distortion of Patagonia or the Falklands, stretched out of alignment by the projection method Piri Reis was using. Renaissance and medieval cartographers routinely filled the southern edge of their maps with a theoretical terra australis, a great southern land that scholars of the time believed had to exist, philosophically, to balance the weight of the northern continents. It was assumption, not survey. The resemblance to Antarctica might be coincidence, or a projection artifact, or confirmation bias from people who wanted to see a match. This is a legitimate critique. It matters. The map alone does not prove what Hapgood claimed. But then there's the Orontius Phineas map from 1531, and this is the part one find genuinely harder to dismiss. It shows a continent with interior mountain ranges and a central depression consistent with what we now know is subglacial topography. A Renaissance cartographer guessing the sub-ice basin of Antarctica by accident? Some historians say yes, coincidence and speculation. Others find that specific a coincidence difficult to swallow. That tension, right there, in that gap between coincidence and how did they know, is where the serious question lives. Not in alien theories. In cartographic evidence that the mainstream explanation fits in perfectly. Let's be honest about both sides. Because credibility matters more than drama. The mainstream position, Antarctica has been under ice for tens of millions of years. No human civilization existed during any window when the continent was ice-free. The Piri Reis Map is most likely a compilation of medieval and classical sources, incorporating speculative geography common to Renaissance cartography, with possible misalignment of South American coastlines. This is where most serious cartographic historians land. It's a reasonable conclusion, grounded in both geological science and the well-documented habits of Renaissance mapmakers. And yet, here is the silence in the official answer. Piri Reis wrote notes in the margins of his own map, in Ottoman Turkish, which we can read, stating that he compiled it from older source charts, some allegedly taken from Spanish sailors, some from sources he described as ancient. Those source maps don't exist. We cannot check them. The chain of custody ends before we can examine the originals. Hapgood may have overinterpreted what he saw. Almost certainly, he did in some ways. But the source question, where exactly those coastal features came from, and how a 16th century Ottoman admiral produced that specific configuration, hasn't been answered with the precision the question deserves. Science closes gaps by examining evidence. Some of this gap is still open. Antarctica is melting faster than the models predicted 10 years ago. As the ice retreats along the peninsula and coastal margins, rock and sediment that haven't seen open air in millions of years are emerging: ancient riverbeds, exposed fossil forests, glacially polished stone. Researchers are discovering things continuously. New islands emerging from the ice. New shoreline where there was none before. No evidence of human habitation has been found. None. That's important to state plainly. No tools, no structures, no artifacts. The subglacial surveys, as extensive as they've become, have returned nothing that archaeology would recognize as human activity. The case for a pre-ice civilization remains exactly what it is: a theory built on disputed cartographic interpretation and a timeline that geology does not currently support. But the surveys aren't finished. The ice isn't done retreating. And the honest position, the one that doesn't oversell the mystery but doesn't pretend it doesn't exist, is that we are still mapping a continent the size of a world. The Piri Reis Map hangs in the Topkapı Palace Museum in Istanbul right now. You can go see it. The bottom portion still has no single explanation that fully satisfies every researcher who has examined it. The subglacial world beneath the ice still has more unknown than known. And the idea that something is waiting to be found down there, not a civilization necessarily, but a piece of the timeline we've been reading wrong, is not fringe speculation. It's just science that hasn't happened yet. So here's what I want to know from you. When you look at that map, and you see the coastline at the bottom, what do you think is more likely? A lucky guess by a Renaissance cartographer filling in blank space? Or something copied from a source that no longer exists? Leave it in the comments. Because the disagreement itself is more interesting than any single answer. And if Antarctica raised more questions than it answered, the next one goes somewhere even older. It's on screen right now.